everybody. Welcome me back because it's been like 4 hours since I've been here. You all have been here. I've been in the chat, but I haven't been on screen. You're probably wondering, who the hell are these handsome guys sitting here? And I'm like, you already know me. I'm Matty Washburn, but I'm only one guy, so you must be also talking about these other fine-looking gentlemen. Today with us, we have Eli Benson and Benjamin David of the Above and Batman Beyond podcast. Eli was also the voice of Dwayne McDuffie in our Black Heroes Matter video a while back. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Talk about what you do other than just being the biggest Batman Beyond fans I think probably exist?
Thank you. Awesome intro. First of all, amazing to be here. And yeah, Eli, introduce yourself.
I'm Eli Benson. I am one marginal part of Above and Batman Beyond. And I also have an Instagram account, Batman Beyond fan page. You can now find me also on Twitter and Facebook. And it is a pleasure to be here with my co-host and good buddy, Benjamin David.
Yeah, man. I am beyond, hey, fortunate enough, didn't mean to do that, I swear, to have Eli here as our in-house expert on the Above and Batman Beyond podcast, as Maddie mentioned. The other exciting thing too is recently we have switched almost entirely to YouTube. So we're slowly catching up, very slowly, to the DCAU Watchtower. But yeah, eventually we do want to, have it all the way YouTube with the podcast kind of as a backup / supplemental piece and continue the mission of Above and Batman Beyond.
Is your YouTube channel also titled Above and Batman Beyond?
It is also titled Above and Batman Beyond, yeah.
All right. Hey, there's somewhere from 80 to 100 of you. There's 90 of you in the chat right now. Go open up a YouTube tab. You're all here because you know us from YouTube. Go open up another tab. Give them 90 more subscribers. Do it. It's real easy. But today, we're here to talk about the legacy of Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. It's been 20 years since the initial release, and it's one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. I'm sure it's probably you guys' favorite as well. Where do we want to start with? You know what? What was your experience of the first time you saw the movie?
Eli, go for it.
Okay. So my first experience, I actually remember vividly. Do you guys near you have any restaurant called a Fuddruckers?
You know, back in Florida, we had a Fudd Puckers, which I think was probably like a local spin on the formula. So
we have a Fuddruckers. It's like a burger restaurant, and I remember I must have been like 7 years old, and they had TVs typically set up with like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and stuff, and I saw a trailer for Return of the Joker. I guess it was for the VHS DVD release, and I was kind of blown away. For some reason, I mean, I was already a Batman Beyond fan at the time, but for some reason, I never really conceptualized the idea that they might make a movie of it. And I remember watching the trailer, but not really understanding what I was looking at, or the significance of it. So that was my first kind of initial reaction to it. And then when I later first watched the film, I saw the cut version, the censored version first. And that was my my definitive Return of the Joker for a very long time until I eventually got the DVD release. I didn't even know there was 2 cuts for a very long time. I was saying to Ben before when we were watching how I actually wish that I could have the first viewing experience again as an adult, because there's a lot of twists and shock value that play for this movie, but I was too young at the time to really understand the significance of a lot of the nuanced scenes, like the idea of Joker understanding who Bruce was in the flashback sequence and how big of a deal that was. I didn't really understand that at the time. So it would have been really cool to see older and understand a lot of the shock value and a lot of the twists that the movie is supposed to set up. But overall, I would say that for me, it was kind of the definitive Batman Beyond experience as a kid. I had some of those Batman Beyond DVDs or VHSs, that had like the 3 episodes in one.
Yeah.
But if I ever really wanted to watch Batman Beyond, I would always kind of go back and watch this. So this was kind of my definitive viewing for a while.
How about for you, Ben?
So I kind of had a strange introduction, probably a little different from you guys, especially because I'm a little older than both of you guys. I'm 35. So for me, Beyond was going on as I was like in my teens. And so I didn't really discover Return of the Joker until I had delved back into the series in like my mid 20s. So Netflix was featuring Batman Beyond, if you could still imagine that world, when Netflix.
Now, was this when Netflix was shipping DVDs directly to your house?
Yes. This is when Netflix was still competing with a little company called Blockbuster. Yeah, man.
I've heard they have one store.
They do. It's actually in Oregon.
It's pretty small.
It's in Oregon. I know where it is. I've been there.
Really? Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, it's in Bend, Oregon, I believe. But yeah, so this was back in the dark ages of Netflix when, licensing and all that crap didn't matter the way it does now. And yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, I remember Batman Beyond. I always loved Batman Beyond. Of course, the animated series. I had kind of kept up with that in my 20s, but not Beyond. So Netflix brought me back. And then after burning through that, I was like, oh shit, yeah, there was a movie. I don't think I've ever seen this. And quite the opposite of Eli. I thought his story was interesting because I had total opposite. Like I was already an adult, already obsessed with this stuff. I'd already been writing for a little bit, obsessed with story structure and shit like that. So to come into this and be like, why is this movie so good? Like I knew Beyond was good and I knew the animated series was good. It's just, this movie is almost too good for its own good in the best way of like, I just can't believe how seriously they took it and how well done it is. And we'll get into the details of it, but I absolutely adore this movie, not only because it takes me back, has that same effect of the nostalgia, bringing me back to the series and all those same feelings, but functioning as a masterful fucking feature.
Oh, for sure. I will say, like, in response to what Eli was saying about like you don't really get to have the twists anymore now that we're adults and we know the like what happens in the movie. But this movie stands out from the other DCAU movie that I feel like is a mystery movie, right? Mystery of the Batwoman, where like once you've seen that movie once, you've seen it all you need. Whereas this one, it's like, even if you know the twist, everything just hits so hard. I want to say I saw this, I was pretty young as well. And there's 3 bits of Batman Beyond that I remember like experiencing from childhood. It was, the Rebirth premiere, because we were all watching the new Batman Adventures, and then this was all of a sudden happening, and you're just like, what? No, Batman is retiring? What? And so there was that one. There was Earth Mover that specifically stuck with me just because of that reveal of the father in the mine shaft. And there was this movie. While I was growing up, I wasn't really allowed much media consumption. I come from a much more conservative background. I feel like I've mentioned that quite a few times. And part of that is just like, guarding you off from media that they think is, too sensitive for you or whatever, which is, in my case, was almost everything. So if I wanted to experience something, usually it would have to be while I was at a friend's house. And my parents were, they took us over to one of their friends' house, and their friends had children, and they were just like, go play with the kids, go do your thing. So we're sitting there playing, Tony Hawk Pro Skater on Dreamcast for a while. And I was just like, oh, hell yeah, this is, really fucking cool. And it gets to a point later in the night where the kids are like, hey, you want to see something really cool? And they put in Return of the Joker.
Like looking around and shit.
right. And they put in Return of the Joker, and I don't remember much about that first viewing, but the scene where Terry comes back to the Batcave and all the ha 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 is all over everywhere. And like, I'm thinking about, you know, I had seen Rebirth already, and this is like mirroring how the dad died, how there's Joker's graffiti everywhere. And then all of a sudden he just turns over Bruce and you get that huge Joker gas smile on him. And I'm sitting there like, this is the Bruce Wayne that I have seen in all of the, you know, the other Batman stuff. I've seen him fight Joker. I've seen Joker use this gas. And oh my God, he used it on him. How did this happen? What the hell is going on? Right? And then I'm sure that around that point was when the parents were just like, all right, Maddie, time to go home. Which might explain why I don't remember the rest of it. But
stay away from me and my child.
that image has stuck with me. You know, there's so much stuff in that movie that, like, as a kid, you don't get to process it in the same way that you can as an adult, right? Like right. It's all so much more serious because you are invested in Batman in a way that you don't really understand the separation of it being a fictional character, almost,
right, to
an extent. I don't. Where do we want to go with this conversation? What do we want to talk about? There's so many things in this movie. What is the best part of it? What is y'all's favorite thing?
So one thing I definitely want to say is, when you ask people to this day what their favorite Batman films are, at least animated, people will always point to Red Hood, this, and Phantasm typically.
Yeah.
And sure. I find it interesting how this film is always appearing in people's top list. And conceptually, this movie should not have worked at all, but it was a complete home run.
Oh, the whole premise of Batman Beyond.
Right. And I think on a microcosmic example, this is kind of like, I mean, this movie focuses on a Batman that is not Bruce, and it beyonds one of the classic villains, which everyone was afraid of, would be the central, you know, premise of Batman Beyond, of, you know, bringing back Bruce's old enemies and kind of beyonding them, right? Future. Right. Joker beyond, right? Clayface beyond, everything beyond. So this movie, bringing back the Joker and then have it centralizing it around a Batman that's not Bruce, just on paper should not have worked. And it is still beloved 20 years later, even by people who aren't super familiar with Batman Beyond. Oh, and it's kind of interesting how that happened.
Yeah, I was thinking, you know, Eli and I talked about this yesterday when, you know, we called each other, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? There's a ton, as you said, our first thing was like, what the fuck aren't we going to talk about with this? Like, there's just so much. And one of the things for sure, I mean, that we agreed on right off the bat was like, it's always at the top of people's list. So as kind of like a shoot off of that, what, you know, Eli had a good question of just, well, why? Why is that? Maybe that's one of the things that all of us could talk about almost as like a topic. You know, I think my answer watching it today in preparing for this is not just the flashback, because that's a direct, you know, literal flashback to it, but I think that the movie functioning as a wrap up to both Beyond, to both, you know, New Batman Adventures, and then BTAS by default, I think that brings in a lot of the non-Beyond people who just always shrug their shoulders and have to give it up, because it's also an end to their character too, be it Beyond or not. It functions as an end to Beyond, like I said before. Like they totally could have ended the Batman Beyond series. Terry would have gone through his hero's journey. You know, Bruce would have faced a lot of the stuff that tied up loose ends. I mean, it functions in so many damn ways. And I'm going to say, I think that's one of probably the reasons. And then of course, the fucking flashback itself is just.
It really is the culmination of everything DCAU Batman kind of brought to a head.
Yeah, Batman specifically. Because at first I was like, oh, maybe it's because it's a big DCAU tie-up, and it's more just like the DCAU Batman. And for me, obviously, like I'm partial to the character, but You know, we'll probably get into it at some point, but I think one of the strengths of beyond the Batman shows and even this movie shows that their versatility in storytelling throughout the DCAU, you know, even going into JL Forward of starting off with an anthology style series with Batman the Animated Series, continuing that into even up to beyond. You know, they were anthologies, even though it was in the same universe, it was still somewhat serialized. Then they were like, no, we're going to serialize everything. And then it's no, now we're going to make features, and yet it all feels cohesive. I think all of that going into, you know, this too, I think that just, you know, speaks to the strength of the film.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's, in a way, I feel like it's kind of similar to, you know, Justice League Unlimited's epilogue, in how that, like, I guess acts as a finale to Justice League Unlimited, you know, despite the fact they got another season afterwards, and Batman Beyond. Like, in the same way, this, you know, it works as a finale for Batman Beyond and the new Batman Adventures, despite the fact Batman Beyond kept going, you know, after this was done, and like Bruce kind of has the company back and all that stuff. Like, there's stuff from this that affects, you know, later stuff in, you know, the Batman Beyond mythos, but most people will tell you, like, watch this at the end, you know, this is the ending of the show. And that's definitely probably part of what, you know, brings people into it. But on top of it, you know, just being the finale, there's just so much good stuff, right? Like, I mean, you start with that splicer battle, which to me was always one of the coolest concepts in Beyond, right? Because like we had splicing going like as far back as like the very start of this world with, you know, On Leather Wings.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's right.
And as the world progresses and technology progresses, you know, the splicing keeps going on. And you got, I guess it wasn't even technically a splicer battle, right? Wolf was the only splicer out of all those. It was Joker's, but one of the Joker was a splicer. And geez, I'm just like, we had that, like we go into this whole mystery, the whole, like, Terry being like, why are you closing everything off from me? Like, what's going on? And trying to figure that out for himself. And for a while you're thinking, oh, it's obviously this other guy that looks like Joker, who's also voiced by Mark Hamill, who wants the company. Obviously it has to be him. And they do that whole twist on you, right? Where it's the guy who the last time you saw him, he was an innocent little boy. He's trying to blow up the entire world.
Do you feel like if you watched now for the first time that you would have fallen for the Jordan Price red herring, or do you think that would have been too obvious?
You know, I feel like it's been a couple months since I've watched the movie. So I don't remember the details of how they tried to set that up too much, but it probably is a little obvious, right, to an adult, because it's just like they're hitting you over the head with it, the similar character model, the voice actor. So I probably wouldn't you know, fall for it if it was a first time viewing as me, almost 30 years old, but like. At the same time, I don't think I would expect it to be Tim, right?
Sure.
Like,
sure.
I would think maybe Tim was working for the Joker, but like, there's no way, you know, going into it blind to predict that Tim's entire body could just morph all of a sudden. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, no, my pretty much first viewing for memory was an adult, and I was like, first of all, so fucked up. Like, it's the whole concept, as you said, with the kid, that of course makes it the most twisted, but the way they present it, and then you have him killing the Joker, and then you have him killing the Joker of all people, like, it is just fucked up in every way possible. But yeah, the transformation thing, because I specifically recall going like, this could be cheesy, but they did it just right. Even like the transfer of Joker's consciousness into some future other person, and subdermally hiding it or whatever. And it's a lot of techno babble. I was also saying to Eli though, and something that didn't really hit me until kind of going into all this for the stream is like, I kind of buy it extra though, because it's a Beyond story. Like, it's not just a Batman story where Joker did that. It's, that's not just some flash forward sequence from TNBA. This is a Beyond story. It's a sci-fi tech-driven Batman. So it's cool to, as Eli said, like have each villain almost match Bruce in a way of, Bruce builds a high-tech suit, Joker's got a high-tech thing going. Phantasm did the same thing in the comics, you were saying. Mm-hmm. I found that almost like, even though it's still technobabble and a big leap of faith, you got to take suspense of disbelief, whatever you want to call it. I think it works really well for Beyond.
Right, and like on top of that, I've never thought of this before, but since I brought up like the splicing aspect of things, is like we've had transformations going all the way back to On Leather Wings, right? Like Kirk Langstrom somehow turns into this big man bat thing and then turns back down to Kirk Langstrom. And so like in my head, I've, always thought, well, like, I don't think that it actually would work for Tim to just transform into the Joker. Like, what kind of sense does that make? And it makes so much sense given, the science that they've set up in this world. Like, your entire body chemistry can somehow change and transform, and they don't necessarily explain it in like a way that would make sense in the real world, but given the rules that we have in the DCAU, it's just like, yeah, no, it works. We've got Kirk Langstrom can transform. We had the werewolf back then. We've got, Clayface transforms, Ink transforms. Like, there's a way to do it. They don't have to explain it to you. They've shown it to you time and again.
And I always kind of suspend my disbelief when it comes to Joker. I mean, like, I was just telling him, like, Joker's Millions, when he's, trying to find a way to get money together. Somehow he has ejector seats already in his car, right? Like, it's just one of those things. He always has at least enough for the heist or enough for the story. So I'll just suspend my disbelief when it comes to most Joker stories. I'll just assume he somehow has things available at his disposal.
That's a really brilliant observation you made, though, of the transformation, likening that to splicers and then all the way back to Man-Bat. Yeah, I mean, those are shape-shifting. That's the old werewolf. Mm-hmm. And this is something I was talking about, again, to plug the YouTube channel for a minute. Like, one of our recent videos, I'm doing Breakdowns Beyond, where I break down episodes, and Lost Soul started off with a favorite, how to do it. And like, it was, how did we just get there? Sorry.
Transformations.
Now I'm in plug mode.
Transformations.
But before that.
Man-Bat.
Damn it. Oh, old-timey horror. Okay, so Lost Soul it's like very influenced by old-timey horror as throughout the DCAU, as we just talked about. And so I think that really is just another example, the Joker transforming from what is, and this might be a good segue to get into some Robin stuff, how this is very much, a Robin, the Robin problem, as I'll call it, for Bruce in kind of his arc throughout this, of like, how important that relationship is to who the character of Batman is, to the mythos of Batman, that student teacher, all that stuff. As you said, the innocence, to take the most innocent and then transform him like a fucking werewolf into the most evil villain of your universe. That's pretty hardcore.
Right, for sure. Because like, at this point in time, like, we don't have like all of we don't have the Static Shock crossovers. We don't have the the mystery of the Batwoman, the stuff that kind of shows that Tim has grown up a little bit, right? Like, the last time we saw him was New Batman Adventures, and he had maybe a year as Robin. And so Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker is essentially asking us to, believe that this is basically right after that. you know, at least at the time of its release. And he didn't have, you know, much time in that show to, I mean, I don't even remember the number of episodes he showed up off the top of my head, but like there were what, 24 episodes of the new Batman Adventures, and he wasn't in every single one of them. So he's still kind of like a rookie, and gets taken by the Joker and Harley and just all of that stuff that happens to him, how they manipulate his brain, they turn him into like a Joker Junior and all of that. And that's not only is that like a huge trauma for him, but like you start to understand like Batman's like reason to guard himself off and to like tell Terry like, no, stop, because he doesn't want the same thing to happen to Terry. He sees this as like one of his greatest failures. And you know, up until recently, with, I don't know if you guys are paying attention to Batman The Adventures Continue, this is at the time of release his greatest failure. Right. You know, it's there's no coming back from it. They banned him from ever putting the Robin suit on again. And if I remember correctly, like he basically told like everyone, hey, hang up the cape, you know, at this point. And there's just so much emotional drama going on there.
Yeah, I mean, was there stuff you wanted to say about that? I was gonna.
Oh, well, I mean, I have a few notes taken.
Okay.
But I mean,
yeah, no, I mean,
whatever.
I was gonna say, just picking up again, like with the, you mentioned the greatest failure idea, you know, clearly not spoiling, I should say, teasing Red Hood. And I was saying to Eli that I'm sure I'm not the first, but for somehow I never made the analogy of this is, again, thus far, the DCAU's Red Hood that we never got. Because this was our Robin in the DCAU. So you're kind of Red Hooding Tim Drake in a way. You know, instead of the Lazarus Pit, you have him bring back with Joker, and a lot of the similarities. But all of that, I mean, really what Red Hood is about, as you said, is Batman having to face that it's his greatest failure. You know, speaking of Red Hood, I was watching the other night, there's that choose your own adventure version of Death in the Family coming out, animated. And so I went back and watched Under the Red Hood, as I do probably, you know, bi-monthly at least, just because I love it. There's two documentaries on there. I was telling Eli about. One of them was not just about, you know, Jason Todd, of course, but there's another one about the history of Robin altogether, and like goes all the way back to why the character was created, different forms of Robin, and again, the relationship student-teacher, father-son, mentor-mentee, how these are classic character story structures that go all the way back to, I mean, literally medieval lore is what they based, you know, Robin Hood, like the domino mask and all that shit. Is the medieval guys would have these pages and these, you know, assistant teachers, students, whatever you want to call them. And for, you know, we get to see that same guilt that makes Red Hood such a powerful movie / story come out in the DCAU with, you know, who we grew up with as Robin, and it makes it so much more powerful.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you know, there's been conflicting reports, you know, over the years of like Paul Dini had said in Wizard magazine, oh, like, yeah, there's similarities to Jason Todd, but you know, that wasn't intentional. And then years later, Bruce Timm was just like, no, we fucking made him Jason Todd, like whatever. that's what we did, you know. And so I've always seen this as you know, the DCAU's Death in the Family kind of story arc, right? Because this is, up until recently, the DCAU's Jason Todd.
You have to be careful.
and you know, it's, I don't know if they went into this like saying, hey, let's make this you know, our Death in the Family, but whether that was the intent or not, that's what the payoff is. You know, it is all about that failure of Bruce's, which is just, it's a fascinating way to make a movie that Bruce isn't the main character of, right? Like this is a movie about Terry. Terry's the main character. It's Batman Beyond, and yet we're still focusing on, you know, Bruce Wayne's failures, and that's probably part of why. It ranks so high up in people's lists, is because of the fact that you know, it just has that emotional weight once again.
It's interesting. When I talk to a lot of people about Batman Beyond, almost always they'll only ever refer to Rebirth or this. Mainly this. Like, I know a lot of people that have never watched Batman Beyond outside of this film. And it's just really interesting because they still have a pretty good grasp of the concept of the series.
Wait a second.
And I think that's because this...
Are you trying to tell me anecdotally that the Zeta Project crossover Shadows isn't the most popular Batman Beyond story?
Yeah, right? When Batman and Zeta fought IU-7.
IU-7.
Infiltration Unit 7.
Yes, these are the robots who go out of their way not to fight. Yes.
But yeah, where were we? You were talking about you know, how people you talk to, like, this is one of the things that sticks with them, and then I started pontificating about Zeta.
Well, I was just saying how it's interesting how people who aren't familiar with the Batman Beyond series all that much, at the very least have seen this, and they still have quite a good grasp of what the series is about. I would say that this movie excels at deconstructing all of our main characters before, I would go as far as to say, completing their character journeys for the most part. So I would say if you want to get a quick, I guess, idea of what the premise of Batman Beyond is, this is what you should go to. Outside of a handful of episodes, I would recommend. You really do get like the full grasp of everyone's character in this movie, I feel like.
Oh, for sure.
That didn't quite hit me until today either, is that not only does the movie function, you know, as we keep saying about, it has its own functional story, but then also fits into the series. It also functions as you could have never seen Batman Beyond before. Mm-hmm. And I think you did say that on the call, but some of the things that were hitting me as I watched it, you know, stuff even like with Bruce that I never thought of, you know, in the very beginning, like it was right after that, the cold opening, and you see Bruce you see the Batarang, and then it comes back to Bruce, still got it. So it's like, you don't even have to know that guy was Bruce Wayne Batman, but you see him throw a Batarang, he says, still got it. You're like, oh, that guy used to be Batman. Mm-hmm. Next. It's like, and then the cold opening shows everything that Terry's capable of doing. Like, not only is this awesome action-packed intro, which, you know, Dini's like infamous for, is starting it off with action. Like, let's not jump into flashbacks right away. Like, let's get this going. But that also it introduces you to the character of Terry. And then it just functions as a really great feature too, of going like, you know, the things that we keep talking about with the hero's journey of Terry, the guilt that Bruce feels, and again toward the beginning, they have this exchange where those two arcs get tied together so well. Like, it's such a good A/B storyline, and you could tell, like, yeah, these guys know their fucking TV, because they just are perfect tying together two separate arcs. And even before you know the twist, it's still, again, the Robin problem of the guilt that he felt for all the Robins in the past. He's now feeling for Terry. He's then scared shitless, thinking, even before he knows it's Tim Drake, that this kid's going to get killed now. He's like, put away the suit. We're done here. Like, you know, this is no longer fun for me bringing this thing back. I don't know what I'm thinking. And then it's the ultimate reveal of like you know, that guilt manifesting itself in the purest of evil in the world of Batman. It's so amazing how all that got tied together in the feature as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. So something that we did touch on a little bit is that obviously there are two different versions of this film, right? Mm-hmm. The cut and the uncut. And I think most people, I'm sure the two of you will probably agree, that the biggest change between the two was the way that the Joker died. And there's been back and forth argument, I feel like, in the 2 decades since, about which version of that scene was more impactful, right? We have the one where Tim shoots the Joker, and then we have the other one where it's like he slips over a puddle or something and accidentally pulls a lever, and you see him like electrocuted in silhouette. What do you guys think about the differences in that, and which one do you think is maybe the darker and more impactful version of that death?
Go for it.
So I would say, in terms of just strictly reactionary in the context of the characters, definitely the version where Tim shoots him, because that was a very deliberate kill. Whereas I actually think that the uncut version where he slips and he electrocutes himself, I actually found that more graphic, just because it leaves a lot for the imagination. Like, he just fried himself, but it wasn't as impactful or poignant because that was the Joker's mistake. All Tim did was push the Joker off of Bruce, but it was the Joker's mistake when he slipped and fell and electrocuted himself. It wasn't an intentional kill. But in the I guess the cut version or the uncut version, it was Tim directly pulling the trigger and killing him. So I definitely lean more towards the shooting version, but I will say that I do think the electrocution is pretty graphic. The scream that just kind of echoes out, it's pretty. I haven't seen it in a while, but I do remember it was actually pretty. It just leaves a lot for the imagination since you don't actually see it, right?
Yeah, it's got like that Hitchcock thing of, one of the things that makes those movies so terrifying is what you don't see.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the the DCAU crew has been talking about ever since going back to Batman the Animated Series, when they had to deal with network censors and stuff like that. Like say in Robin's Reckoning, where the Flying Graysons die, and they show all of that in silhouette, and they show the snapped trapeze rope, but you never see like boom, thud, impact, hit the ground.
Right.
Or in Over the Edge, where when Batgirl falls off of the roof of that building, you're watching inside of her dad's fucking cop car, and all of a sudden, boom, impact.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating that like the crew almost always found a way to please the censors while making it more graphic.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, you brought up splicers before, and it was interesting how and I believe I was listening to some of the commentary on episode and how they actually got around the censors and were allowed to have Terry fire the gun with the premise that it's a cure gun that cures them of their mutation or whatever. But I always found that interesting, in terms of the censoring.
It's still a gigantic rifle that they shoot right into the screen, but it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, the way they got around gun stuff, like is in the DCAU as a whole, is just kind of wild, because Batman the Animated Series, they had Tommy guns and everything, and the contemporaries of Spider-Man the Animated Series and X-Men the Animated Series, they're using laser guns,
Right.
stuff that doesn't exist. And I heard that the crew was saying, so long as we put in the script, we just called it Dark Deco weapons, and we just kind of styled it after a version of a gun that's not necessarily currently available on the market, we were good to go. And it's kind of funny that as this world went on and grew, they weren't able to do that quite as much anymore, but you're also moving the tech up of what the world is. And so it's just okay, it makes sense that they have laser guns now, whatever.
Right.
or a cure rifle or whatever it is. I do think something we've been dancing around a little bit without, outright saying is in the years since this has come out, there's been a lot of recontextualizing of stuff in this movie, right? Like we have, like I said before, Tim Drake grows a little bit older in this world, and so like now in our heads we have to kind of reimagine that flashback as, I know he's, still small little boy there, but he's really a couple years older than he was. Or like how, Batman The Adventures Continue has brought in Jason Todd to the DCAU all of a sudden. Now it's just like, Batman's just like, Joker killed one Robin, let me get another for him to kill down the road. Or, we have like, the Batman Beyond 2.0 comics, Robin, where we see what happened after the flashback, and even, to an extent, Batman and Harley Quinn, where Harley's just like, nah, I'm not with the Joker anymore. And we all know she has to go back to him because in this movie, they said, like, we never saw her again. Mm-hmm. And even, the tie-in comics to that movie suggested that she'd be joining Task Force X sometime in the near future. So it's like, was she, on a Suicide Squad mission here? Because we've learned through recontextualization in Justice League Unlimited that like this was all Cadmus tech and stuff like that. So right. What are y'all's thoughts on really, I guess, any of the recontextualizing of it? I just threw out a bunch of examples. So, you don't got to remember them all. You don't got to touch them all. But like, what is some of the best and worst stuff that you think has come out of all of that?
So I don't know where this has come from, and I'm going to assume it's because of Batman and Harley Quinn. I don't know. But suddenly everyone's asking me if the DD twins' grandfather is Nightwing. I don't know where this has come from. I'm going to assume it's that movie's fault.
I can't stop laughing at that.
And
the D in DD stands for Dick. They're actually Dick Quinn.
And like people are running with that. Like that's just people's headcanon, and I guess that's fine. I just don't know
what makes me laugh so hard is that it's not that far off. Like, I don't know, is it?
I mean, Harley and Dick are both acrobats.
I would say that's the one I hear the most now. I mean, I always, of course, you always have to keep in mind, as you said, like the Robin thing. Robin's actually closer to being an older teenager as opposed to looking like a little boy. Mm-hmm. But you have to kind of retroactively excuse these things.
Right.
But no, it's weird. Even with all of the new content we've been getting lately, be it Justice League Unlimited, not too long after this, or even Fatal 5 and stuff like that. I could still watch this movie and not even retroactively insert those things. Like this movie, I just kind of watch as its own thing, even though it's the culmination of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I don't really think about all those retroactive changes or inserts or anything like that. Even some of the more direct ones, like Joker using Cadmus tech to do this. I just kind of section this story off and I watch it for what it is. And I honestly probably couldn't even map out all of the retroactive inserts and changes and stuff if I just couldn't. There are some.
I'm gonna go with DD Dick. That's perfect. I'm good.
I will say though, this movie, the final confrontation between Terry and Joker is my favorite fight in the entire DCAU. A close second would be Superman and Shazam, but who doesn't love that fight?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, like that, the Joker and Terry fight, like I don't know how we've gone almost an hour without even like actually talking about the climax of this movie. I mean that fight is, it's so well shows you the difference between Terry's approach as Batman and Bruce's approach as Batman, right? Mm-hmm. Because Bruce's approach has always been, hey, let's beat the shit out of them and then worry about the reform part later. You know, let's worry about the talking and all that lovey-dovey bullshit after the fact. Let's get them in Arkham. Let's fucking go. Whereas Terry's just like, hey, Bruce never, you know, talked shit straight to your face. I'm gonna do that.
I love that it kind of devolves into just sort of a street fight. Like, you know, Joker rolls up his sleeves and Terry runs over to the door and breaks the lock on the door. And it kind of reflects the inner nature, you know, of Terry being a prior street delinquent, and then Tim Drake, before he became Robin, was a prior street delinquent as well. And I feel like it's a really interesting character reflection on where these characters started. And it's an interesting reflection on, we always say how Bruce is like one bad day away from becoming something like the Joker, right? And so it's interesting seeing the, you know, Batman versus the Joker, but it is literally, this fight is happening through his children, right? So it's both potential character endpoints of Bruce Wayne battling through the physical manifestation of his kids, right? And there's just something
Dad
really
loves me more,
right? It's just really interesting to me.
I'm the favorite.
It's I don't know. There's just so much. There's a lot of layers to that fight, and it's it's really good.
I don't think I've even ever considered, you know, the Tim being a street urchin thing having, you know, something to do with the way, right? Because like once I get there to that point in the movie, I'm like, that's not Tim, that's Joker. But you're right. I mean, that is Tim.
You know, it's the Joker definitely playing on Tim's consciousness. It's him playing on Tim's experience. And, you know, Tim's true inner nature, since, you know, he's so heavily borrowed from Jason Todd before Jason Todd existed.
We must be careful.
Was a street rat. And so this fight kind of devolves into a street fight, literally having Joker roll down his sleeves and say, like, I'm about to whoop your ass, basically, right? So,
and Terry's fighting style from Get was always a brawler versus, you know, they always deliberately.
He's a dirty fighter.
Yeah. But also, you know, without the training, I think you were saying, like, Bruce's approach of, you know, just beating the shit out of people. What's interesting there is that, you know, Terry's fighting style, because he wasn't trained, like Bruce could have maybe some more finesse and be a bit more of a ninja since he's literally a samurai. But he's like, no, I'll go with the beating the shit out of them. And, you know, but a Batman versus Joker fight from traditional Bruce Wayne Batman would have been probably a lot more, you know, of the theatrics and the smoke and the gadgets. And with Terry, he's just like, roll up your sleeves and let's do this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, like when I brought up the, you know, the talking that they do, it kind of, you know, reminded me of like that's kind of how in Mad Love, like how Batman would talk to Harley, you know, get in her head, be like, the Joker doesn't care about you, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it's so weird thinking about like how, you know, Bruce would talk to Harley like that, but never the Joker. Whereas like Terry's just like, you know, I've dealt with, you know, literal like chimeras. I've dealt with a zombie. like I there's a woman who could turn into ink. Like I've dealt with all this nonsense. You're just some fucking clown guy. Like, get out of here. You are to me, you are the same threat level as a Harley.
No, that's so funny you just said that, because I think I was saying earlier, even on the stream, that until today, I don't know if it hit me as hard how scared everyone from the old guard of the Batcave is of this asshole returning. They're all scared out of their minds. Like, Tim Drake shows up to Barbara's office. Thanks for seeing me. She's like, anytime. Like, it is heavy. Bruce is like, hang up the suit. Like, we are done. Game over. And meanwhile, Terry has this naive innocence of going like, look, yeah, I've heard the stories, but like you said, I've been up against Chimera. That's funny. But yeah, I think watching the fight today, a little bit of that came out too, of like that youthful innocence of the fearlessness of youth is a really interesting to come out in a fight that should be a lot scarier for him, but it ends up working out in his favor that he's not so scared.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's been a running gag on our channel, right? That I think needs to be brought up here. And
do it.
And you guys, being the Batman Beyond fans that you are, maybe you have the answers. But where's Nightwing? Where is he?
He and I were just... Right,
we were just talking about
it's
this.
So funny.
Like this movie gives us, the entire Bat family except for Nightwing, and I feel like maybe had Nightwing been in this movie, it would have been a little bit more too bloated, But at the same time, you're thinking like he had a connection with Tim, right? Like Tim was his replacement, the two. Despite, the new Batman Adventures never really had everyone on screen at once. Like the two had a couple episodes together where they kind of connected, Nightwing told him his backstory. What do you guys think about not even necessarily just the lack of Nightwing in this movie, but like in Batman Beyond in general? Would you have liked to see him, or?
I don't mind that he wasn't in the series overall. I was just telling him Nightwing should have been in that hospital room at the end. That was a father reconnecting with his family. This was the Bat family coming together. Even Barbara conceded, and she was there. Everyone was in that room.
Maybe he was on a date with Nana Harley.
God damn
Look at you. Grandparents still do it, guys. Sorry.
He should have been in that hospital room, is my point.
I think I feel like maybe the reason they didn't do that was because like he wasn't there in the movie at all, and like some people be like, wait, who's this guy? But they mention when they go into the flashback, they're like, Nightwing had already gone off to Bloodhaven, so it's like they expect you to know who Nightwing is to a degree, as a prerequisite for this movie. So just for if he just showed up out of nowhere at the end, like I don't think that it would have raised too many questions.
I would have been fine with it.
It would have kind of been like redoing the ending sequence of Sins of the Father.
Sins of the Father. Mm-hmm.
It would have been a great callback to that, I feel like.
It would have been, yeah.
Yeah, I think at the very end it would have been perfect. I think I was thinking about this. I felt so clever making the notes of this today of like hero's journey, and it wraps up everything. TMBA, look at me. I'm like, every character's fuck, because it's not. It's like we're missing somebody pretty important being the first Robin. So we're missing Nightwing. I'm like, why would you leave him out? I think maybe like if I am to speculate a defense is it could have made us feel better about losing one Robin, because you kind of have, you're like, oh, well, he did a good job with Nightwing, so I did one thing right. And I think maybe if you use the word bloated, that might have bloated it, perhaps, as it potentially could have taken away the gravitas of losing your youngest, most innocent Robin if you still have this like, hero who was able to then go out, strike out on his own. He was a Robin. He turned out okay. Maybe that, but I still think you could have had him show up at the end, and all of that could have still been in place.
I would have been fine with this movie had he not appeared anywhere else but the hospital.
But the end, yeah.
And if he was just there without any explanation.
And just Lauren Lester's voice, like just for one line.
I just think he should have been there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
would have been, could have been, right? So we are hitting the hour mark on this chat, and I think that's close to where we're supposed to start wrapping and going, prepping for the next guest, which I believe is Dan Riba.
Nice.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
I love hearing the fact that I'm being followed by Dan Riba. I like that.
Right? You guys are the openers. So, before we wrap, was there anything else, in the movie that you feel like we didn't adequately touch on and you'd like to explore a little bit? I'm sure we can run a couple more minutes if you guys have anything.
The one quick thing I want to make note of is I like how we were saying this is the culmination of everything sort of Batman DCAU related. By extension, the music is kind of a nice blend of the Batman Beyond rock electronica and your classic BTAS kind of orchestral sounding music. You kind of get a little bit of both in this movie, and it really sort of drives the atmosphere.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think that, when I watch movies, I never really, pay as much attention to the music as, say, someone like James, who has a marching band background situation. But yeah, definitely. No, there's a lot of both in this. That's a good point that I would not have thought to bring up.
Yeah, just to go off what you're saying, I mean, to plug the podcast real quick with the music specifically, we had Christopher Carter on twice, and I brought up Return of the Joker both times. He scored the whole movie, and both times we talked about how he deliberately, excuse me, because it's the return of this classic hero. It's really a score of the whole Bat canon. So you have the horns, and I was listening back to the episode today to kind of get some specific trivia. 65-piece orchestra he had on the Warner Brothers recording stage, along with all the metal and shit of Beyond. Then, he has...
Wasn't Static X part of this as well or something, I think?
Yeah. And then who was the blues guy that he had? Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Just musically, it just spoke to how much effort and amazing work and classic just storytelling that went into this movie. Yeah.
For sure. Well, I think that pretty much does it for this panel. We got to wrap and start, focusing on getting ready for Dan Riba.
No worries.
Everybody in the chat, you know who Dan Riba is. He's worked on almost all of these shows. It's going to be an exciting time. I'm sure that, despite the fact it's 1 a.m. over there, you guys might even stick around in the chat to watch Dan Riba. Who knows?
I'd love to.
Yeah.
But before we go, go ahead, plug your stuff, one more time. You just plugged the podcast. Where can people find you on YouTube? I'm sure there's people who are here now who weren't here earlier that might have missed all that. Where can people find you guys at?
Yeah, no worries. So just like the podcast, Above and Batman Beyond on YouTube. Again, we switched almost entirely to YouTube for the time being. We're going to start bringing the podcast in as like a supplemental thing once again, but the focus is YouTube, and hopefully soon enough do some collaborations with the DCAU Watchtower here. So please subscribe to our stuff. Like if you like their stuff, we especially recently, I started, as I said before, doing breakdowns of episodes. So I kind of have my own like news style, almost like Daily Show meets clip style that I do. But then I also started doing the breakdowns more, again, like just close to Beyond, trying to give people a little taste of everything. There's pod clips on there, a ton of stuff. So subscribe to that. And then we're also Batman Beyond Media on Instagram.
And you could find me also on Instagram. I am Batman Beyond fan page. And you could find me doing episode analysis, suit analysis, character analysis, fan art, anything and everything Batman Beyond related. Find it there, Batman Beyond fan page.
Yeah, that profile's serious. So
I think Ted might have even just dropped your YouTube link in the chat.
Awesome, thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. I mean, having our launch is going to be next month, and I'll be announcing that soon. But to kind of start it all off here, to kick it off on something as big as this with you guys, it's such an honor, and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's been splendid. I always love talking to you guys. It's been way too long. I don't think I don't think Eli and I have ever actually, had a conversation with each other, long form like this.
Hopefully the first of many.
Ben, we've chatted like this before. I was on the podcast at least once, I believe.
Hell yeah.
So, it's been way too long. I'm looking forward to doing this again sometime.
Yeah.
We'll be back anytime, dude.
And thank you too, Ghost James.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Vance.
All right, Ghost James, play us out.